This is a Main Hustle Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Jackie O and you're listening to Militantly Mixed.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
I would like to acknowledge that the Militantly Mixed podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Chumash and the Tongva people, and I wish to pay my respects to the people of those nations, both past and present. Hey y'all, welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Charmaine, aka MixedGirlMane, the busiest mixed race, bisexual, polyamorous, atheist, comic book nerd, cat mom podcaster in this podcasting game. I am a little bummed today. At the time I'm recording this is Saturday, May 2nd. And what I was supposed to be doing today was speaking at the Mixed Race Heritage Conference at UCLA on a topic that is pretty important to me, art as activism. As you heard a couple weeks ago, we spoke with Dakota from UCLA's Mixed Race Student Union, and I really wanted to be a part of this event, but unfortunately due to coronavirus, everything's shut down. I didn't get a chance to do it. It was going to be a really busy day because it's also Free Comic Book Day, which is like an international, I don't want to say holiday, I don't know what to call it. It's an international day that comic book stores around the world give out free comics. Different authors and distributors put together books specifically for this day. In terms of nerddom, it's a pretty fun day to kind of go out to all the different comic book stores in your area and pick up new books and things like that. Get exposed to comics if you haven't been before, things like that. And since I work at Pulp Fiction Comics here in Culver City, California, I was going to be starting my day at Pulp Fiction and ending my day at the conference speaking. But since, and it was going to be very stressful because I wanted to be able to devote full energy to both of those events, but they both happened to fall on the same day, and, I was going to make it work. I don't have to make it work now, so I'm bummed, though. I'm really, really bummed. I was really excited about what 2020 was going to bring in terms of speaking engagements and different opportunities, and to have them kind of dip away one by one was sad. I still do have 2 more events on the docket that haven't been canceled yet that I depending on what the world is like by late July and August, will determine whether or not I will be going. I will be a panelist at the BlurredCon in DC, which is going to be my very first BlurredCon, which I'm really excited about. I've been wanting to go to the con in DC for a couple of years now, but I have a panel that was selected for that event, and they haven't canceled it yet because they're anticipating things going back to, I guess, I don't want to say normal, but opening up, I guess, by then. If I feel that it is safe enough to travel by then, I will be doing that event with my co-host from Blurred Comics, Blurred Vision, and a couple of fellow podcasters. Hopefully it's safe enough to travel at that time, but if it's not, hopefully they do a virtual conference, I guess, for that con. But yeah, so today's kind of a bummy because, man, I really wanted to do that Mixed Race Heritage Conference at UCLA. But next year, I've already told them if they want me next year, they got me next year. So I'll make sure that it's a priority to be able to do. But yeah, so whatever. Bummy, I guess, that happened. So last week I had made a statement about kind of feeling weird or gross about continuing to promote the Patreon and the PayPal during this time because, I know it's a tough time for a lot of people. Not everybody are able to work or, the future is really unsure right now. So I kind of felt weird about it. And my whole thing was that, for now, I'm still making enough money to be able to produce the show. But if things got desperate, I would reevaluate at that time. But I would do my best to continue doing the show, regardless of whether or not people continue to support the show financially or not, given this pandemic. And I got a couple messages about it. One in particular, I think they'll know who they are when they hear me describe it, basically said, people want to donate if they want to donate. You're not begging people. You're not telling people they have to. You're just putting it out there that if they can and they want to, here's how to access it. And if they don't want to and they can't, they just won't. And you don't have to feel gross about it, to do it. I had another person who said that they really just want to support this thing that gives them something to look forward to every week. And even if, it might not be that much, just being able to do a little bit at a time makes them feel good. So message received. And this is actually something that I had heard last year when I was feeling gross about promoting the Patreon. And that was just because I'm like Japanese and I'm filled with guilt when anybody gives me something. And they were telling me, like, if you need money to have the show survive, tell your audience. If they care, they'll support if they can, And so I took that to heart last year and I started promoting the Patreon. And it worked. Y'all came through for me in a big way. I've been able to continue to do all this stuff. I was able to replace my laptop. So many things I've been able to do because of the financial support. So, message received. I understand that I'm not telling everybody this show's going to go away if you don't support me. What I'm saying is I do need y'all's support to keep the show going. And right now I'm lucky enough to get enough support to keep the show going. So if you can and you want to, I can tell you the 2 ways that you can donate to the show. And if you can't or you don't want to, but you just listen to it, the other ways to support the show are leaving reviews on whatever podcatcher you listen to it on, sharing episodes with your friends, retweeting, regramming, Facebooking the shares. Like, there are a bunch of different ways to support the show, and not all of them are financial. But if you do want to support the show financially, you can go to patreon.com/militantlymixed and sponsor as low as $1 to as high as anything you wish. And there are different reward levels depending on what level you sponsor at. And I'm happy to report that in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, we've received 2 new sponsors of the show. Andreas, which I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Andreas, and Silas or Silas. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I only have the word written out to go off of, but thank you both for stepping up and adding to the Patreon. I really appreciate you, and I hope I get a chance to connect with you both soon. And also, shout out to Megan, one of our regular sponsors, who has increased their sponsorship during the month of April. So shout out to y'all. Thank you for helping to keep the show going. We did get some loss over the last couple of months, which totally makes sense to me, and I was expecting it. And I'm telling people, if you need to pull out. Don't feel guilty about it. You've been supporting me for as long as you have, and if this time is tough for you to do that, it makes total sense to pull out. If you don't want to support on a monthly basis, but you do want to drop some coins in, I guess, the tip jar, you can go to paypal.me/militantlymixed. And both of those ways go directly into the Militantly Mixed bank account or the Main Hustle Media bank account. So it all goes back into the show. And of course, we still have the stores open. If you want to go to Etsy or Teespring and search for the Militantly Mixed stores, that's where you can get the t-shirts, the tote bags, the mugs, the stickers, the enamel pins, etc. And all of those links are always in the show notes, including the Patreon and the PayPal, if you want to get linked directly to those things. All right, enough of the business stuff. A couple of things that I wanted to talk about today. Some of them really don't have much to do with mixedness in general, but just happy news in the time of COVID, I guess is the way I want to say it. I didn't talk about it last week because I was, kind of bummed out, and a few other things happened that changed. So I just kind of scrapped my whole intro and recorded something new. But this week I'm going to go back and talk about it. So not this last week, but the week before, my very close family friend, we've known each other since 4th grade. We're family. Their parents are my parents, or they're my other parents, things like that. Everybody's brother, sister, niece, nephews, cousins. They had a very significant thing happen to them 2 weeks ago. My play nephew, Austin Jackson, was drafted into the NFL on the first round draft, 18th pick for the Miami Dolphins offensive tackle. As if that news wasn't big enough as it is on its own, that's, somebody grew up and trained really hard to be able to perform at such a high level that they got drafted into the NFL. About a year prior to this, Austin had donated his bone marrow to save his sister Autumn's life. She was born with a rare blood disorder, which I've talked about on the show before. It's called Diamond Black Fan Anemia. And basically, she's received blood transfusions every month of her life since she was born. She's basically been knocking at death's door the entire time she's been alive. And last year, she graduated high school. She's 18 years old, and they went into a procedure in which Austin donated his bone marrow to her to save her life. Luckily, he was a 100% match for the 12 different markers that they look for to see if someone might be compatible. They were 12 for 12. And despite the fact that he was about to enter into his third season at USC in football, he did the surgery. He took about 54 days of recovery time and physical therapy to get back into training at USC. All the while, his sister was recovering from a surgery that it could have killed her. I mean, the disease itself could have killed her, but the transplant could have also. But it was a risk they were willing to take in an attempt to save her life. And so far, it's been about 8-9 months. It's been successful. She is, Autumn's producing her own red blood cells now. And even though her blood comes out like it's his, it's registering as his blood because it was his bone marrow that was donated. It's working. So far, it's working. She was even able to leave the hospital a month earlier than planned, and she's in recovery. It takes about a year or so for them to consider someone fully recovered, so we're not quite there yet. But, I mean, this family has had just the most insane year, from Autumn hitting a milestone such as getting 18 and graduating high school, given the fact that she was basically expected to die at any time, to also being able to get the surgery, for Austin being a match, for both of them to survive, for him to continue to be able to train and perform at such a high level that he was drafted into the NFL. Like, it's been a huge year. And even from the outside, as sort of like a peripheral friend of the family member, I mean, I'm very taken and moved by what they've been through. And I've only gotten to see it, firsthand here and there throughout their years. So it's a big deal, and I just want to talk about it. I don't know. I just want to share something like that because it's such a wonderful thing to happen in a time that is so scary, where future is so up in the air. And for the first time in Autumn's life, she legitimately gets to plan her future. And Austin is about to start his future in the NFL. So so it's just a big deal, and I wanted to share it, even though it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Militantly Mixed itself. It's just it's some happy news I'm clinging to right now, given how crazy life is. Yeah. That's I got more that I can talk about, but I'm already hitting the 14-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to this week's episode. But before I do that, just a reminder, we are doing weekly virtual hangouts, social distancing virtual hangouts for Militantly Mixed listeners. It's been awesome. I just love getting to do this every week, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow's session. So if you want to participate, you just go tomorrow. By the time I'm recording on Saturday, but it's not tomorrow at the time you're listening to this. We do it every Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT, UK time, and 8 p.m. East African time. So that's like a broad window to try to get everybody. So far, I haven't been contacted from other time zones to say that they want to participate either, but that's kind of the best time that kind of squeezes everybody in. If I need to make adjustments, I can. You can go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/militantly mixed, and look in the events, and you can click the link to get into the event that way. Or you can send me an email at charmaine@militantlymixed.com. That's S as in Sam, HAR, M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, E, at militantlymixed.com. And just let me know that you're not on Facebook, but you want to participate in the group, and I'll send you the link that way. You can also slide into the DMs on Twitter and Instagram, and we can go ahead and do it that way. It is a really great support system, one that I didn't even realize how much positiveness it was going to add to my own life producing the show. But we get to commiserate, we get to meet, like, oh my gosh, that happened to me too kind of moments. We get to ask questions of like, does this happen to you? And somebody else in the group inevitably will say, yeah, I've been through the same thing. We've covered issues of parenting while mixed, and sort of like claiming your identity while mixed. Like, there's so many topics that we all could really use having conversations with more than one person about. And this is a group setting, and it's awesome. We're we're starting to get to know each other too. So if you're able to participate, even if you can only come once, great. But if you can come on a regular basis, it's really awesome because we're developing a support system in that virtual hangout. So I do encourage y'all to participate. All right, that's enough. This week's guest is Natalia. She and I have been kind of in communication for several months now. She's one of my Patreon sponsors. And the last time we were meant to record was before all this stuff went down. It was early in February and I got massively sick. And then I went to Houston and we just couldn't get anything together. We finally have managed to get together. So I'm happy to be able to share her episode. For me, that is a fun part of hosting this show, is finding the commonalities with other mixed people, in particular when they don't have the same heritage that I do. But it's also really fun to find out the differences and learn something. I get to take so much away from every person I speak to. And Natalia was also one of those kind of conversations. It was awesome. And I'm looking forward to sharing it with y'all. And without further ado, please help me in welcoming our latest cousin to join the Militantly Mixed family, Natalia. Guest this week is Natalia. We have been talking for several months now. You're also, well, I mean, I guess I can cut this if you don't want this out, putting your business on the street, but you're also one of my Patreon sponsors of the show. Natalia, why don't you tell everybody about yourself and let's get into it.
Hey, everybody. My name is Natalia. I am in my early 40s, some 70s baby.
I should have went like, toot. That's what I should have done because we're from the 70s.
My heritage is Black and Mexican. And interestingly enough, I had a conversation with my husband about it today because he likes to tell me I'm Mexican and Black. And I said,
oh, and you have a different order. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That resonates
and
with
me. I said, well, I am Mexican and Black, but I identify as Black and Mexican. Mm-hmm. And he's like, but I don't understand because you grew up with your mom mostly. And your mom is Mexican. He's like, you have Mexican mannerisms, heritage. He's like, I see you more Mexican. And I'm like, well, I'm not denying my Mexicanness.
Sure.
But I don't know. I just, when I think of myself and my ethnic makeup, I just think Black first and then Mexican.
Same. I have the same thing. I'm very hierarchical in my mixedness. It's Black and then Japanese and then the various white things that are in there.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's weird to me. Like, I don't even know, like, when I made that hierarchy or why I prefer it that way. Because, as he pointed out, I did grow up with my mom mostly. Like, my dad was in my life, but I mean, that was weekends and sporadic here and there. So
do you think it relates at all to your presentation or just experience?
That is an interesting question. I don't know. I think growing up, especially like around my family and from the hood that I'm from, like it was majority Mexican, but everybody always knew you're Mexican, but there is something else going on in there. So,
yeah. Do you have a hybrid name for your ethnicities?
Blaxican.
I do enjoy the hybrid names. So you did grow up even like neighborhood wise, predominantly Mexican as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I had a conversation with my husband about that yesterday, about how I'm from the hood, but like my hood is different from his hood. Mm-hmm. So he's like, you're not from the hood. I'm like, yeah, I'm just not from your hood, but it was still the hood. I mean, it was, I don't know, I'd say like lower middle class. We talked about the similarities, things that we experienced growing up, but some things he was just like, nah, you might lose your hood card on that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, hoods are different. And I would say that if you do come from a similar hood, you recognize it in other people. I've had people, I grew up in Long Beach and my neighborhood was predominantly Black, which is also
feeds into why I identify more Black before anything else. I have met people from like the South Side of Chicago or Detroit who will notice, they'll ask me where I'm from because they can see it, they can pick it up in me and mannerisms or things that I say. So it's like we grew up in a similar type of hood, so we recognize each other. And I assume that would cross over also for a predominantly Mexican hood too.
It does. And interestingly enough, I am from the South Side of Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but again, like my husband's from the East Coast. And like, I remember when he was
different. Yeah.
It's totally different. And I remember like, when we first were getting to know each other, he was saying something about a bowl. This bowl did this and this bowl did that. And I'm like, what are you saying? And he's like, a bowl, a young John. I'm like,
a young John. And you're like, again,
like a dude, like a guy, a boy, like it's just that, it's just a different hood.
It is. When I was growing up, I always fantasized about being from New York and stuff like that. And I thought, I was like, I am not California enough. I am totally New York. I just need to get out there. And then I get out there and I'm like, oh, I'm Californian as hell. Like, I am very Californian.
Yeah.
Because some of the things they say can cross over because I listen to a lot of hip hop, but some of it didn't get over here. So I never heard bowl. I have heard John. I had heard young John and stuff like that, but I hadn't heard bowl before. That's funny.
Yeah. And I'm totally butchering the accent and everything, but I was just like, I don't know what you're saying.
So we got different hoods. We need a little translator app where we can be like young John and then talk into it and then it speaks out dude.
Right.
That's funny. So your husband, does he identify you more as Mexican solely off of like your mother and your upbringing, or?
Well, I mean, his thing is he's like, you grew up with your mom and so you were more immersed in that culture. So, you're more that. And I'm like, but like textbook, I agree. But like in practice, it's different because I don't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I definitely feel 50-50, but I don't feel like, oh, I'm more Mexican or I'm more Black or.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the main questions that I got in grammar school. And you want to talk about bullied. So I went to a predominantly Black grammar school, and it was like a magnet school. So we had to be bussed like out of the neighborhood. And, I think it was me and another mixed girl, and then everybody else was Black. Well, there was one white girl in my class, but I don't know. She didn't get the bullied. Like the mixed girls got the bullying. And so one of their favorite questions would be, well, if you could only be one, which one would you pick?
Yeah, I get that question a lot too. Or I did a lot growing up.
And I'm just like, I can't pick. So why even think about it? Like, that's like dumb.
Yeah, that's fair. Like if that's, especially if you have equal access to everything you're mixed with, that's a little bit because if you break down the question, what you're asking me is to choose between my parents, kind of, right?
Yeah. Or to choose between cultures, like which one do you like best? Like it's not a thing like, do you like tacos more or fried chicken more? Like, it's a whole like half of who you are.
Has that ever shifted for you? Was there times that you did kind of have a preference, or no, it's always been the case of like, no, I'm half and half and I'm fine where that identity is?
I think high school was definitely like a more difficult time than grammar school, just in terms of like finding my place. Like, do I hang out with the Mexican kids or do I hang out with the Black kids? Because when you hang out with the Mexican kids, they're always talking about the Black kids. And then when you hang out with the Black kids, they're always talking about the Mexican kids. And I'm just like, so I don't fit in either one.
Yeah, actually, that's a good thing to come up because I'm not sure that has really that much. I also grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood, but there was the next ethnic group, the next largest ethnic group was Mexican. And then, sprinkling of white kids here and there. I guess it would be kind of like Black, then Mexican, then, Asians, and then even fewer white people. And it was the early 90s. And it was Long Beach. So I had crunchy curly hair and I had stacked bangs, which was very close to how the Mexicans looked. Plus my presentation is, yellowish and my skin tone and everything. And they would think I was Mexican. And then I would say, no, I'm not Mexican, I'm Black and Japanese. And they'd be like, you should be proud that you look more like us than like them. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I'm happy with who I'm mixed with. But then on the flip side of that, with the lighter skinned girls, they lined up against me as being, you think you look better than us, you think you're cuter than us, and stuff like that. Whereas like the dark skinned girls just liked me. It was just fine. We were just friends. They weren't threatened by me or assuming that I thought I was better than them in any way, shape, or form. But whenever I was around the Mexican kids, they didn't know I wasn't Mexican, so they would share.
Yeah.
They would share how they felt.
Too much sharing.
Too much sharing. And then I'd be like, hey, I'm Black. And then that whole thing, you should be proud. I remember this one time in particular, it really hit me hard where someone was like, you should be proud that you look more like us than like them. And I was like, I don't even know. My 14-year-old brain doesn't know how to process a statement like that.
Yeah, because it's like they think they're complimenting you, but they're not.
Yeah. And assuming that the same thing that they value, you value.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sad that you're not what they are.
Yeah.
So in terms of your access to both sides of your culture, like both sides of your heritage, how did you feel mixed, or did you feel just kind of like you knew you had different color parents, but it just was a thing?
Yeah, I definitely felt mixed. I definitely felt out of place, like I didn't belong with like one side or the other. Mm-hmm. This is in general terms, not, so much with my family, because I always felt accepted with my family. But interestingly enough, I'm very like fair skinned, but my brother, he's much lighter than I am, and he has green eyes. Mm. And when he was young, he had blonde highlights. So, and what's funny is, and what's funny is when I was thinking about the interview and thinking about, because I know you did one before with sisters and how their experience was a little bit different from each other. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is my brother and I never really had conversations about race or how we felt about being mixed or how we felt about like how we presented, because he, I think he passed for white like a lot. Mm. And I don't know that he necessarily corrected anybody. And
look like family, or do you?
Oh, I'm spitting image of my dad.
So you look like your dad. But does your brother look like your other side, or do you, like if you were side by side, do people identify you as siblings?
No, we've gotten mistaken for a couple before. I was like, that's nasty. And then somebody thought we were married once. I was like, for real? No. No.
Wow. My brother and I don't look like we don't present the same race, and we're full brother and sister also. And same, don't talk about it. Like he doesn't want to talk about it. He's not. Mm-hmm. He's happy to be assumed white, even though he's darker skinned than I am. But he has the whiter features. So, does that, as adults, have you tried to have that conversation?
No, I mean my relationship with my brother is a little complicated. So we tend
same.
So I mean I could reach out, but I don't know. I guess part of it is like I don't know, I think I judge him a little. And I don't want to be like, well, I'm the pumping the black fist and you're just over here passing. So
right. No, I can see that too. The few times we have attempted to have these conversations, my brother's frustrations with my militancy, which was very visible very early in my life, he would be like, I just don't understand why you're so proud of it. And I had no way of explaining it. It's just like, I just feel this way. I'm just excited of my heritage, and I align more with the values of Black militancy and things like that. And it speaks to me more. Social justice is important. before I kind of had the terminology for that, you know? And for him, he's just like, it shouldn't be important, you know? Like, it just, for him, it just shouldn't be important. And I don't know how to talk to him because of that. But also, he has drawn that line. Like, this is not a line we get to talk about. So even in terms of like tagging him in a post or anything like that, or a photo side by side, because it's so obvious that I'm MixedGirlMane, that's like off. That's not okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I guess for me, like, I don't know, that makes me like sad that somebody wouldn't want to like embrace fully who they are or recognize like where they came from.
Yeah.
You know? So
yeah, it's tough because like everybody's mixed experience is their own thing. But when you feel like there's a level of denial in there, like I have a certain amount of denial. I'm not as comfortable accepting the whiteness in my case. And I do sometimes have the answer to that question. What would you choose? Sometimes like in a really shocking moment recently in the last like 4 or 5 months, someone asked me a question that made me go, oh yeah, I think I would. It was the way they asked. It was, and I was really stunned to hear my answer, honestly. The way they asked is if it were the Matrix and you had the red pill or the blue pill and one pill made you black and the other pill kept you mixed. I answered way too quickly that I would take the black pill. And I was like, oh shit, I just learned something about myself today. You know, like it wasn't even, it didn't even register to take a beat or to be like, no, I'm not going to answer that question. In that particular moment where my head was, I just really needed to be black. And this was like just a few months ago. So I've been dealing with that. But the white side is like it's never a part of my process. Like I really focus more on being black and Japanese. And then to a degree also the British culture versus necessarily the white side, you know. I don't really know how to deal with that. So I definitely have a level of area of denial, I guess, but not so much denial that I don't list it. I just don't investigate it, I guess. Do you feel like you got a chance to be both? Or did in school, because of the way people were treating you, you kind of had to perform one or the other for your own survival and comfort?
I think, you know, the first year was like, I was half with the Mexicans, half with the blacks. And then like sophomore year, I was like, well, I just fit in with the nerds.
Okay. You got to find your tribe wherever you find it.
so, and then people will call me weirdo. So I was like, that's cool. Like, you're not going to put me in a box.
Right.
So, yeah. But, I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that I got to experience both cultures, growing up. You know, my dad, I think he's a little bit lighter than I am. So when my ex-husband, when his mother first met my dad, she said rather loudly, I thought you said he was black.
Oh, excuse me.
And I was like, well, I didn't know that being dark-skinned only is what qualified you as being black. Right. So, and it was a thing, like he looks Puerto Rican, he looks this, and I'm like, but he's black.
That's pretty wild. How do you code? Like, how do people respond to you? Do you feel like you're perceived as a black woman, or do you feel like you're perceived as a Mexican woman? Or I guess we were kind of talking before where you're perceived as something completely unrelated to what you're mixed with.
So prior to converting to Islam, I converted when I was 18. Prior to that, I think I coded mixed. Okay. You know, I don't think that people could look at me and say, oh, she's Mexican and black, or she's Mexican, or she's black. Like you could tell, like there's some black in there, but what else is there? Okay. You know? But once I started covering and wearing the hijab, all bets are off now. Like people speak to me in different languages, and I'm just like, I don't know what you're saying. And I have had people try and convince me that I'm from Jordan or Egypt or even like Somalia. I was like, really? Because I don't look Somali at all. Like,
it's so funny when people bring up like cultures that don't actually even look like each other. but they're all the ones that are being named for you. Like when someone says I look Dominican, I'm like, that makes sense. I have Black phenotypes and yellow skin. Like, yeah, I can see that. But sometimes I'll get like, I look Iranian, and I'm like, but I don't, besides dark hair and yellow skin, like where is it? But if someone looks at my husband, who's half Palestinian and half German, he's had people say that he had Kuwaiti eyes, or, you know, or like he has more of a Lebanese nose, or something like that, or whatever. And then in the end, he's Palestinian, and probably being mixed is the reason why he's not registering exactly as Palestinian versus any other thing. But people get really passionate about what you actually are, like what they've decided you are versus what you actually are.
Yeah. And then it'll be a thing. Where are you from? Chicago. Where are your parents really from? Chicago. Where are your grandparents from? Mexico. And then they get real confused.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you want to go far back, like the ship that my great grandmother was brought over on, like in the slave trade? Like, you want to go there? Like,
yeah.
So
yeah, people get pretty strong about it. One time I was in New York, and I was buying T-shirts for, it was like my last day of my trip, and I was buying T-shirts, and the guy who was running the kiosk was Arabic, and he started speaking Spanish to me, and I was like, oh, I don't speak Spanish. And he said, what kind of Puerto Rican parents raise their child not to speak Spanish? And he like I said, he's Arabic the whole time. He's obviously Arabic too. And I was like, a Black and Japanese one? And then he started speaking Japanese like hella fast. And I was like, whoa, pump the brakes. I'm like, slow it down. And I was like, I can speak a little, but like slow it down. And then we finished our exchange and stuff like that. And I told him, I'm like, Japanese assimilate. They don't really teach their kids. So that's why my Japanese is really slow. So we had this whole conversation, and it was awesome. It was like all different things, culture, whatever. And then as we're leaving, I say shukran, which is thank you, as I'm leaving. And he goes, oh, Arabic you speak. And but that was because my best friend was Arabic, my husband's Arabic, and so like I basically can cuss in Arabic, and I can say thank you, and that's pretty much all I can do. And that was just one of those exchanges. Like, he had decided I was everything but what I was, and then when I was out of the closet about what I wasn't enough of that because I didn't have language, and then on top of that, I co-opted his his natural language.
Well, it's funny because language, was, it wasn't, my mom is fluent, and, her first language was Spanish. And so you would think that she would teach it to her kids, but she didn't. And I asked her about it when I got older, and she's like, well, your dad doesn't speak Spanish, so, I didn't teach it to you kids. And I was like, yeah, but he left when I was 4. There was still plenty of time.
You could have still got it in there.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was a thing of she just was like, she worked a lot. She worked 2 jobs, So I don't know if she just didn't like put the importance of it, to teach her kids. I mean, I picked up, a lot from my grandmother.
Did you have like broken Spanish and English kind of conversations?
Oh, yes, for sure. And my abuela, my grandmother, she understood English a lot. She liked to pretend that she didn't, but she would never speak it. If you spoke to her in English, she would answer you in Spanish.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. But I took classes in high school, and I had my grandmother. We used to go to Mexico every summer. So when you're immersed in it, it becomes more familiar.
Easier,
But I was always like, Mom, I could have been fluent, but like now I'm too self-conscious about it.
Yeah, same with me. I'm far more comfortable speaking Japanese in front of Americans because then they're like, ooh, and I'm like, yeah.
Right. Don't let the Japanese hear it. Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm so apologetic the whole time too. Like, I am sorry that I am butchering my family language, but.
And then when I had kids, I was like, I can't teach them ghetto Spanish. Like that's not going to help them at all. Like I'm not going to I don't know how to conjugate verbs. I don't know how to translate like a simple word. I'll be like, door.
But what about like just picking up the vowel sounds and things like that? Because that's actually one thing that I feel lucky about, that even though I don't speak Japanese, because I spoke broken Japanese in the house, I can do all of the vowel and consonant sounds that we don't actually have in English. So like if I try to get my husband to say, we have a sound that's like do, it's like a D and a T and a O all together, do, and he can't make that sound. He keeps saying do. And stuff like that.
Does he only speak one language, or does he speak Arabic?
He only speaks English because he didn't know he was Arabic till we were in our 20s. And then we actually didn't meet his biological father till we were nearly 30. And so like he's picked up more Japanese because he's been around me dropping it and being around my grandma and stuff like that on occasion. Yeah. Then he does his own.
The girls, yeah, they have definite exposure because my mom will speak to me in Spanish, and, you know, so we can talk about things in front of them without them knowing what we're talking about. But that's
the other reason why they need to teach us our language, so that we can talk in front of people.
Yes. So my oldest has picked up some things, and she'll be like, I know when you say this, you're talking about me, Mom.
So funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So my mom and I like, we got to come up with a new code name for her.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cute.
But yeah, they definitely can, you know, they can roll their R's and stuff like that. And then, they are, learning some Arabic, like in Sunday school and stuff like that. So I think it makes them able to pick up other, you know, vowel sounds and stuff like that. 'Cause Arabic has some.
Yeah, there's a lot of different sound that we don't produce in English. My best friend's mom used to grab my face and my neck and my chin, and she'd be like doing all these things to try to get me to come close to pronouncing things.
Yeah, there's one letter, it's all in the throat, and I'm just like, you sound like you're choking.
Yeah. It's funny trying to figure out, like for me, I'm kind of a visual and a touch and a do learner. So like I have to see someone do it, and then I have to like try to physically do it myself or whatever. But with language, when you're talking about moving like where in the mouth or where in the throat or where in the nasal area a sound comes from, I struggled with that, which is so weird because I had different accents and different language growing up. Like I was raised in the early days by my Japanese grandma, my British grandmother, and my parents were so young that they were kind of in and out at first. And so like I spoke broken English, Japanese with a British accent. They put me in ESL classes because nobody could understand me, even though I was speaking English. They just didn't know I was speaking English. And so I was like, you would think I would have this ability because I've had exposure, but come high school when it was time to like learn French, I couldn't get the nasal stuff. And with my best friend's family, I couldn't get the throat-based words either because I just couldn't figure out how to move sound there because I'm used to talking in front of my mouth, you know, like that's kind of weird. I understand the mechanics of it. I just don't know how to physically do it.
Yeah.
Myself. So how, as an adult, because the way you identify yourself as Black and Mexican, but you did grow up predominantly Mexican. Do you know if you identified the reverse ever and then it's flipped over time? Or do you feel like you've always kind of been this way, identifying as Black Mexican versus Mexican Black?
Yeah, you know, I don't know that I paid too much attention to how I identified when I was growing up. Like I knew I was different. I knew I was mixed, but I didn't have the language for it. Especially because like it wasn't until I was older that I found out that like my mother's parents like were low key upset that she married a Black guy. And so I don't know, like it was the 70s, so it was all free love and everything, but I don't know that there were many conversations in my house about race. So I don't know that I, you know, looked at myself one way other than I'm different than almost everybody else.
What about your brother? Was it more because the way you two presented that it was easier for your Mexican side of the family to be more embracing, do you think? Or
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was definitely like, you know, I guess like jokes and stuff, stuff that's supposed to be funny, but it's really hurtful. And when I was younger, I was always like outside and in the sun. So I used to get really, really tan. So this is so not right. But so family members used to call me JB, Jet Black Jungle Bunny.
Okay. I was trying to figure out what that might be. That's rough. You're just a kid.
Right? Mm-hmm. And also like when I was little, like I had longer hair, and then like my mom says that I got gum stuck in my hair. I still don't remember that, but like she cut all my hair off. So it was a thing like where I felt like a boy. And then like, I don't know, it was just, it was not a, an easy thing to go through. And I think my brother definitely had it easier because he was white presenting with green eyes. Like nobody at school like ever questioned him about anything, and I even found out, like, I think I was like almost 40 when I realized that this grammar school that my mom had enrolled us in, my brother got in because they thought he was white. And so they were filling their minority demographic because it was a mostly Black school. Yeah. And so then when it was my turn, she was just like, oh, she has the same father. So I was like, Mom, you let them think I was white? And she was like, well, yeah. And I was just like, I'm kind of hurt by that. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, just things that you don't even like pay attention to as a kid, and like realizing as an adult, I'm like, Mom, you let them think I was white.
Yeah, that would rock me too. I've really struggled with that.
Yeah.
That's
well, I recently, a few years ago, I did the ancestry thing, and I was like, let's see, what I'm really made of, because obviously my dad is very fair skinned. So I'm like, there's got to be white in there somewhere. Sure. But I didn't know it was that much.
I mean, listen, like that was actually something I was really nervous about when doing mine, was thinking like, what percentage of Black would crush me? Like finding out that I was less Black than I thought I was.
Yeah. And look, I kept seeing like, what it was like Ireland and Scotland and England. And I was like, where's the African countries, man? Like, I know it's in there. So, yeah. So when I look at it, I'm like, I just don't really pay attention to all that.
In terms of your father, I'm assuming he had light-skinned parents also, but did he have two Black identified parents?
Oh, you know what? My dad, he's a whole, check this out. My dad, when I was in high school, I was doing like a family tree. It was like a class project. And so I was like, Dad, your sister, your other sisters, blah, blah, blah. And he just gave me this look like, we don't discuss that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm just doing a family tree. And so I tried to wrap my brain around, because my big mama, his mom, was born in 1896. And he was born in 1947. And I was like, that doesn't add up.
Like that math is...
It's kind of off, Dad. Yeah. But he wouldn't talk to me about it. And so several years later, he was like, battling cancer and like writing up his will and trying to do all this, like get all his Social Security benefits. My dad doesn't have a birth certificate. Oh. So I don't know if he was like somebody in the family's baby, or if, because in my family. Yeah. And back in the day, like people would just drop babies on doorsteps. Yeah.
So like you might think that your mother is your mother, but it's actually your aunt or or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. So we got that in our family too.
So we did a search, like adoption records and all kinds of stuff. And we don't know who his parents are. Like we know who raised him, but even like when he was trying to like talked to his aunt about information, she was like, well, your mom was never pregnant. So yeah. And it's weird though, because he had foster brothers and sisters, but he and his sister are the only ones that had her last name.
Oh, interesting.
So I think it has to be like somebody in the family or something like that,
right.
Who had him or just couldn't take care of him or, for whatever reason. But
right.
It was kind of like, it was hard for me, like for my family tree to stop at my dad.
Yeah.
But
it's also a very Black story too, that some of us could have that going on. So you just don't know.
We did all the searches that we could find. Like I went to the library and, looked up records on Ancestry. Mm-hmm. And I know that my big mama was from like Mississippi area. Mm-hmm. But, she was born in 1896. Like
that's if there's biological family too. Like that's a possibility.
Yeah. And there's, 1896, there's no record of her birth. So there's no real records of who her siblings or who her parents or like who could possibly be my dad's actual parents.
Did he look like a Black man, but just was very, very fair?
Yes, especially like pictures from like when I was a baby. I mean, he had the humongous pork chop sideburns. He had the humongous afro, like, he was feeling it. And, all of his mannerisms and everything like that. But again, is that from his DNA or is that a product of how he was raised?
Right. Yeah. And that's actually pretty fascinating too. When you think about that, like I can get really sensitive, I guess, about people appropriating things that aren't natural to them. And yet I know that because of the way I present, if someone doesn't know me and doesn't know my background, they might think that I'm being, like that I'm appropriating, but it's from my natural, where I grew up and the culture and the people that I grew up around. Besides the fact that I do actually have a Black father. And I wonder sometimes, like, how does that, in terms of how we identify and what we're allowed to claim, with quotation fingers, allowed to claim, being mixed is so much a part of both ethnicity and culture. So if we can claim mixed because of our ethnicity, but some of us are like, for me, I grew up predominantly Black most of my life. So it is kind of hard sometimes for me, or there had been times when it was kind of hard for me to embrace the full picture of everything I am. I just was this very, 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 very light Black girl, and now it's a little bit easier for me to be a mixed person who happens to also be, who happens to be mixed with Black, I guess. And when we end up coming from these families, which a lot of us on the Black sides do, my great-grandmother has a tale that, is a question of whether or not she and her siblings are siblings, or are they was one of her siblings also her daughter? Like there's stuff like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened in that family. And they're very, very light presenting too, but they don't come up very white. They don't have a very high white percentage. And I'm like, I don't know how that's possible, because I saw them. Like I grew up around them. My big mother was very, very light. But when I look at the way my DNA breakdown, I don't have, technically I'm a quarter Black, and I didn't reduce that much. It was just like, I'm still like 23%. So somehow she's white presenting, or not white presenting, but very light skin presenting as she was. And somehow I only have 2% of white on that side. That's a shock. I don't know. You just never know. And then whether or not, but she was a Black grandma. She was a Black mother, everything about her was Black, even though she was very, 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 very light.
Yeah.
So is that culture or is that DNA?
Yeah, it's that whole thing of, is it nature or is it nurture?
Because even the weird thing about that is, well, maybe it does happen and I just don't know. Because I guess I identify it more when somebody who is very light I don't even want to assume performance. Behavior is Black. Coding is Black, but they present very light. You don't often see the reverse of it though, or where you identify as just like someone who's very, very Black presenting, but they got white in their family somewhere, and they kind of code white. You don't really call that out that often, or at least I don't think I've seen it that often, where I'm just like, you must have white in you, like how many times have I heard you must have Black in you?
Yeah, you don't hear the that was kind of white.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah, I mean, I did get the whole if you're Black, how come you speak proper?
I really hope this dies soon, because this is so frustrating.
Yeah, and it just reminds me of the movie Airplane, where they had the woman who was translating jive,
right?
And I was just like, and then when they started calling it Ebonics, I was like, oh, just kill me right now.
You and I are from the same generation, so we would have been like barely teenagers, right? Like between 13 to 15 years old when they did this, when they started calling it Ebonics. And I remember being like fresh out of junior high and into high school, just thinking like, oh, please, no, please. I was already struggling with the transition from being Black to African American. Like I still, to this day, do not find it comfortable to claim African American, because I didn't know where in Africa we were from until recently.
Yeah.
But there's
a huge disconnect with that.
Yeah, it's like I didn't have a bridge. So how do I claim this thing? Plus, at the time, I knew a couple of white Africans. Like I knew some South Africans that were entirely white. And they called themselves African Americans because they were American citizens. And it was just like, I couldn't deal with African American. And then on top of that, to like already be kind of dealing with this crisis of what I'm allowed to call myself. And then someone throws Ebonics at me. I'm like, it's not even like Black American or Black English. It's just Ebonics. Right. It's so, I hate it. But that idea of like speaking proper, meaning speaking white, is really, really starting to get to me now. Yeah. I can't stand it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a thing for me. And, I don't know. I just think I'm very appreciative that we have the opportunity to have all of these conversations about race and mixedness, because like I said, when I was growing up, I didn't have the language for it. And, and when I had my girls, I have 3 girls, and my oldest, she's very brown skinned. And then just as they kept coming out, they just kept getting lighter and lighter. So I'm just like,
you're running out of ink.
Yeah, I was like, I can't have another one because I'll be an albino. Like it just... But I paid very special attention to not saying, because they also have 3 different hair types. But I didn't want there to be a thing of, oh, you have good hair.
Right.
It's all of your hair is beautiful. We just take care of it in different ways.
Yeah. And you had to learn how to care for, I guess, probably 4 different textures if you count your own too.
Definitely. Yeah. and I was like, wait, we can't all use the same product. Like, do you know how much product costs? Like, come on.
I know.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And it's funny because my fairest daughter, she has the most Black hair. And I'm just like, and after I had my first daughter, I was like, oh, I had a girl. I had a second girl. I was like, oh, I know what to do because I already have a daughter. Nope. All 3 of them are different in like every way imaginable. So
how do they think about mixedness? Do you know?
Yeah, you know what? We started watching Mixed Dish together. Okay. So we could, open the dialogue about it, because I'm a very open parent. I believe in being honest with my kids, age appropriate honest. So I didn't want it to be a taboo subject. I didn't want them to feel like they couldn't say, well, how come, this or how come that, So we watched it together. We have conversations about it. I think it's funny because my youngest, who just turned 8, she was like, wait, Mom, I'm Black? And I'm like, oh, I'm failing as a parent. Oh. Yeah. So, but definitely like we have all of these stories that are shared now that we can talk about it without, all of the, like, I don't know, I guess stigma, because if you're growing up in a society where, like, for instance, my grammar school class, there was like 35 kids and only 2 of us are mixed. So you definitely feel ostracized. But nowadays, like, out of 35, maybe like 25 of them are mixed.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, depending on what area you're in, but like, it's definitely not the same as when I was growing up.
Right.
And the fact that we have language about it, and I can share my experiences with my kids, so that it's easier for them to navigate things, but my oldest daughter, she definitely had I guess her first quote unquote racist incident when she was, I think she was like 8 at Sunday school.
That's the time for me too, man. I wonder what is about that 2nd to 3rd grade.
Yeah. So she was, she went to, it's a Muslim Sunday school, and like the majority is like, from Jordan, like Palestine. And I guess one of the kids asked her like if she converted, and she's like,
oh, just off of the look of her.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm 8. I was born Muslim.
Yeah.
And like, they couldn't reconcile the fact that she was Black and born a Muslim.
Right.
So
which is weird because there's Black Muslims. Like,
yeah. But
even if you come from Jordan and come here, it's still known.
Yeah. But it's a whole thing. And, like before that, I guess I had sort of like idealized like the whole, oh, we're Muslim, we're not supposed to be racist, but like in a perfect world that would be true, right?
Sure.
But we're human, and so each, I guess, ethnic group has their own hangups.
Yeah.
So I hadn't fully prepared her for that, and she was like, "Mom, this person asked me if I converted."
But
and
also,
like,
how do you prepare them for that?
True.
How would you do that?
And I just asked her, I said, well, what did you think about that? She was like, it was really stupid. I was like, exactly. And they also, they were homeschooled for most of their life. And we recently moved to Arizona. And so my youngest was in school, and she said she got a lot of questions about, what are you? And she said, Mom, somebody asked me what I was. And I said, oh, they said, are you Black or are you white? And she said,
there's only 2.
Right. And I said, well, what did you say? And she looked at me and she said, I told them I was Mexican. Yeah. So not either one of those choices.
Yeah. Which even if she does identify that way, I think what's awesome about that is the confusion that it causes the person who asks, thinking like, wait, there's more than one choice.
Yes. And I loved her follow-up comment. She was like, what does it matter anyway?
Yeah. Nice.
So, yeah.
I mean, at least it's so weird. Like, I mean, I don't have kids, but seeing them kind of become their own little people, their own little warriors for whatever it is that impacts them, it's kind of fun to watch them grow into it. Nieces and nephews and things that I have to see like whatever is the thing that they kind of bite down on around that age is kind of cute. So it's nice to know that she's already protecting herself, I guess, from the ignorance.
She did get, also she got a lot of requests to touch her hair.
Ugh.
And I was like, so what did you say? And she made a face and she was like, I told them not to touch my hair.
Why do people want to touch other people's hair?
Yeah, I know.
It's so baffling. My mom's a hairstylist and I don't have that curiosity. Like nothing makes me want to touch a person's hair that is not like a purpose, like my niece wanted me to braid her hair or something like that, it doesn't make any sense to me that people want to do that. We are coming to the end here though. So I do want to thank you for joining me on the show, especially since it's been a couple months. The world fell apart in the times that we were trying to get together. But before we wrap up, why don't you tell me what you love most about being mixed?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this question all day because I knew it was coming. And I would just really have to say that I just feel blessed to have two cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like, I don't know, like I get the best of both. And it makes for a very enriching life.
Do you feel like you get to kind of, and this is just because we don't have the words for it, I'm going to say the word practice. Do you feel like you get to practice everything together? Or do you have like your Mexican moments and your Black moments?
I definitely think it's intertwined, you know? And, you know, I think at home it's a very mixed environment, but then like when I'm with my mom's family, you know, it's definitely, we're the loud Latinos. So yeah, I don't know. I just, you know, I just love having both.
Yeah.
Yep.
And being able to give that to your children as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
As they come up. That's exciting. Before we wrap up, do you want to tell people how to find you, or?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's mostly my knitting, because I'm slightly obsessed with that. But my Instagram is Not These Knits. It's NATIS knits, KNITS, and you can see all the socks that I make.
You see, you do socks. I want to do socks, but my hands, I got tendonitis, so like knitting on smaller needles is harder. I'm a little jealous of sock knitters. I'm more of a beanie girl because I can use a fatter needle size. Yeah. I'm all about them 8s.
Yeah, socks are in 1s.
Yep. Oh gosh, I just thinking about it right now, my hands are just like, ah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for being with me through this. You know, I think the first time we kind of communicated was maybe like last fall, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
It just means a lot to have people to go to. Like, it's fun to know that not only do I get to follow you on Instagram as a fellow knitter, but you also are mixed, and we could have that to have conversation. You know, like I love that we get to kind of be out of about all of our things. So thank you so much for being with the show, coming on the show, supporting the show. Like, it really means a lot. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you having the show, and I do listen to it with my oldest daughter, and you know, it opens the door for a lot of conversations.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Militantly Mixed is a Main Hustle Media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Charmaine Fury. Music is by David Bogan the One. You can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Militantly Mixed, please go to patreon.com/militantlymixed for monthly sponsorship, or paypal.me/militantlymixed for a one-time only donation. And if you like what you hear on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to be your mixed-ass self.
Main Hustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.